Welcome to the Beyond 90 Seconds podcast. I'm Mark Horner. It's been a few years since I've posted some audio programming on beyond90seconds.com. That's all changing right now. Going forward, expect to find regularly posted podcasts on beyond90seconds.com. So let's call this podcast number 1 in this new era for the blog. And do we have a story to share today?
And now comes the interesting thing. This is something that Professor Bird brought up through the instinct and behavior of birds. It seems to be somewhere imprinted in them that they recognize the hawklet as a raptor.
It's about an unusual bald eagle's nest in British Columbia, Canada. Unusual not because it has 3 eaglets that, so far, appear to all be doing well. No, something else makes this nest unusual, and for the moment, quite special.
Very miraculous, I must say.
To the surprise of everyone, there is a 4th, recently hatched bird in that very same nest. But this 4th bird is not an eagle, and it appears quite small next to the 3 young eaglets towering over it. But there it is, asserting itself at mealtime, and recently flapping its wings while standing along the edge of the nest. This bird is a red-tailed hawk, and no one has provided a closer look at this most intriguing nest and that hawk than photographer Christian Sasse. His video featuring this nest has recently been featured on newscasts across Canada. Christian happens to be a good friend of mine, and it's my pleasure to have him as a guest on this podcast. We spoke on Skype on Sunday evening, June 11th, and there was still more excitement in the air, as Christian planned to return to the nest on Vancouver Island the very next day. Christian, thank you for being a guest on this podcast.
Well, it's my absolute pleasure, Mark. My absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Let's talk about this, first of all, the location. It's on Vancouver Island, and it's near, not too far away from Victoria. Is that right?
Well, it's actually very interesting. So when you go from Tsawwassen, that's the ferry terminal that I take on near Vancouver, you take a 90-minute ferry ride to basically near Victoria, right? And that's on Vancouver Island. That's correct. And Vancouver Island is about 2/3 the size of England. And it's very interesting as you land in Victoria, it's very close in a place called Sydney. The news has actually reported intensely about it. So it's about only 4 kilometers, which is about 3 miles from the ferry terminal.
Now, this is an eagle's nest that has been there for many years. It's been a thriving, historically appreciated eagle's nest by the people who live in that neighborhood. It's near the water, and you, with your magnificent, I must say, 800 millimeter lens, for folks who don't or may not be familiar with camera lenses, I don't know if that's as big as they get, but that's about as big as they get, and you can get so close. And the nest, the positioning of it, the I guess where the tree is located on the slope, everything works out fine because you're taking us almost literally right inside the nest, and you've provided such great footage and photos that the newscasts across Canada have been using your footage on the news, and so this has really taken off in terms of mainstream media coverage now in Canada, isn't that right?
Well, that's absolutely right. I mean, I was actually not working with 800. I was working with 800 times 1.2 a teleconverter. So it's somewhere around 920 if I recall correctly. So it's a huge magnification, and yes, it is a superb lens. It's absolutely superb, and I'm very fortunate because the angle that we can take, I can move right back to about 500 feet. And from that distance, you get a very shallow angle to the nest. And it almost looks as if you're looking horizontally into the nest from that distance, which gives an incredible resolution.
I think it's fair to say that no one is, even the news cameras that have shown up now, no one is providing the close-up view in high res, high def, that you are producing. Now, let's talk about this a little bit. People must be wondering, and let me just kind of paint the picture. I'll never forget this. At least I don't think I will. The sight of these 3 juvenile bald eagles that have yet to fledge, and then this little hawk, which you've referred to as the hawklet, next to these eaglets. And what a profound difference. It's like having, I don't know what the comparison would be, but one of these things is not like the other. How unusual is this, do you think?
Well, I mean, I'm certainly not the expert, but I'm very fortunate. I have two very good friends. The one, of course, is David Hancock, probably the best eagle biologist in the world. And then there is Professor Bird, David Bird, who actually lives very close by to the nest. And he is of course another great expert. And he's a retired professor from McGill, and both of them have we've been discussing this intensely at dinner, at his home, and so on. It was absolutely wonderful to be such good friends. I'm very fortunate, and from their point of view, it is very unusual.
So, to help shed some light on this, David Hancock, for folks who may not know of him, is a highly regarded bald eagle expert. He has been studying bald eagles in that specific area, actually, British Columbia, the Salish Sea, for more than 50 years. And he is the man at the top of what is known as the Hancock Wildlife Foundation, hancockwildlife.org, a nonprofit which will, is one of these operations that will take in injured wildlife, oftentimes raptors, with the hopes of returning them to the wild if possible. Fair assessment?
Well, absolutely. I think David David is a character. What can I say? He is a walking encyclopedia. He is also a publisher for wildlife books, especially, of course, for birds. And he really has a knowledge second to none. I have never seen anything like that. He just reads and reads. Even on the ferry trip, he constantly is reading bibliographies, citing them. Said, "I've never heard of this," and so on. You always. He absorbs information like a sponge. And, he was complaining. He's nearly 80 now. He was complaining of loss of memory. I can tell you, when it comes to eagles, I detect none of this. On the contrary.
And as for Dr. David Bird, I did a Google search and quickly found a page that seems to be his specific website. It's askprofessorbird.com. And I'm on the About page, and it says, recently retired emeritus professor of wildlife biology and director of the Avian Science and Conservation Center of McGill University in Montreal, Quebec, and now living on Vancouver Island. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, I sense that Dr. Bird lives very close in proximity to this very nest we're talking about.
Exactly. And Dr. Bird, at the last Eagle Festival that we had at the Fraser Bald Eagle Festival, he gave a very interesting talk about birds and drones. This is another very unknown subject because often people assume that birds, raptors, and so on, and drones don't go together. Well, again, this is built on prejudice but he is such an expert. He has such incredible knowledge of what type of birds accept what drones in what distances, and he has been able to utilize drones in a very positive way. So it's a very high-tech way. He's got an expert at his side who builds specific drones for him to explore very remote areas without disturbing the birds.
We've done a really nice job of setting the stage. We know that you have the equipment and the passion to get these magnificent pieces of video that you've been collecting and posting to YouTube on your Sasse Photo YouTube channel. And then we talked about the really well-known and respected eagle expert, Dr. David Hancock, and we've talked about Dr. David Bird and some of the things he's doing, especially in regards to drones and wildlife on the cutting edge, and what an expert he is. So the three of you forces coming together with your areas of expertise, and all focused in on this nest. And I can tell you the first question of at least two that stand out to me that many people will often ask is, how did it get there? How did this baby hawk end up in an eagle's nest? And I guess it's fair to say we really don't know the answer, but there are some theories.
Yes, and maybe we should call them hypotheses. The one came, of course, from David Hancock at first when he saw it. The initial thought was that this must have been a female hawk that was caught in a fight or similar, brought to the nest where the eagles were, and then in the dying moments laid an egg. However, when David Hancock went back home and checked the timing, he disregarded that or ruled it out because that would have happened right then when the eaglets already were born, judging on the age of the hawklet, which is much younger, so that wouldn't really be possible. So now the most likely theory is that they were brought in as food source, and there were probably two hawklets brought in, one of which doesn't seem to have survived. At least there's no evidence of this, and one remaining. And now comes the interesting thing. This is something that Professor Bird brought up through the instinct and behavior of birds. It seems to be somewhere imprinted in them that they recognized the hawklet as a raptor, and maybe it was mimicking the sounds of an eaglet or similar, or maybe it was the shape of the beak or a combination of such, which then led the parent eagles to accept the hawk or the hawklet as one of theirs. Very miraculous, I must say.
There's also this concern about what happens going forward. In fact, I know you've addressed this in your live broadcasts on both Periscope and YouTube, and that is this. Some members of the public feel that perhaps it's a good idea to go in there and try to rescue this hawk.
Yes, and that would be completely wrong. The main concern, and that's again referred to David Hancock's experience over decades with eagles, don't interfere if not necessary. Only in very, very strenuous situations should you interfere and rescue them. In this case, it is just the track of nature, and we should just follow it and leave it to whatever may be.
So here we are recording this at 11:19 p.m. on June 11th. It's Sunday evening, and tomorrow you're planning on to return to this nest. That means packing up the gear, getting on the ferry. I believe David Hancock, you mentioned before we began this interview, is going to be accompanying you. And I guess the bottom line is you don't even know for a fact whether you'll find the hawk there when you return.
Well, that's exactly true, and that's why we're returning probably tomorrow for the last time, at least. Then I'm going on holiday, so I won't have any more time. But yes, it's going to be very exciting to see that, and I'm very keen to capture whatever is going on and record as much as possible about this incredible behavior there. Hopefully, it'll still be there, and you'll definitely be hearing of us if everything goes well late tomorrow afternoon.
So you plan on recording more high definition video, which I imagine you'll be uploading to YouTube, taking some photographs and live streaming. How can people find you?
Yes, thank you for asking, Mark. You can find me on my YouTube channel. I have a YouTube channel now that I'm seriously catapulting a lot of videos into now, and I think there are a lot of videos that will please the raptor and bird fans of the world, especially the eagle fans. So this is on Sasse Photo, SASSE, and then photo on YouTube. Just Google that and you'll find me.
And the same as on Periscope. And you have a popular Facebook page, Sasse Photo, as well. And well, what a day to look forward to, and hopefully you'll find that hawk there, and hopefully folks will tune in, and I'm sure it'll be a compelling broadcast. Christian Sasse, thank you so much. And you know what? Before I sign off, I just want to let the audience know, in case they might be wondering, yes, you are the same Christian Sasse who points his camera oftentimes at the night sky. In fact, you were recently down in Australia, where you got some exciting photographs of the Milky Way toward the South Pole, and you stacked those images, and man, was the result brilliant, so much so that National Geographic picked it up for its online site, and there's been other media interest, and congratulations on that success. And I guess we should make it clear to folks that you have two passions behind the camera: bald eagles and astronomy.
Absolutely, and both of them take a very long lens. That's the common factor. Yes.
All right. Thanks so much for joining me, Christian. Best of luck out there tomorrow in Sydney, British Columbia, on Vancouver Island. Enjoy the ferry ride, and I hope you have a wonderful day at that eagle/hawklet nest.
My pleasure. I'll be hearing, or you'll be seeing me tomorrow. Thank you, Mark, and thank you, everyone.
My thanks to photographer Christian Sasse for being our guest today. And thank you very much for your interest in this podcast. I'm Mark Horner, Beyond90seconds.com.